about the stage design that I did for the Galileo game. Each stage is its own class that houses all the assets for that stage, the enemies, the background, that sort of thing. And they all implement this stage interface. Game Panel uses this stage interface to load in the corresponding stage that it needs, and then on a stage change, that current stage object, which is the current stage, switches over into the next stage using these stage change and next stage variables. The spawners, which spawn the enemies for each stage, are housed within game data and then are started by their corresponding function that uses its corresponding class. So stage 1 uses stage 1 spawner, obviously. And the spawner gets the enemies that it spawns from that stage object, and the stage object creates the object, the enemy object, overrides its update function to change how it moves, adds in a proper image, and then also changes the type so that the stage gets the exact enemy that it needs, and the spawner determines how many of those and when they spawn for all 4 of those. And then the power-up enemies, which spawn intermediately throughout each stage, are also created in this, where they are created and then use the vector movements that I'm going to talk about, and then are flagged as a power-up enemy, which I'm also going to talk about later. The background scrolls endlessly, and the way that it does that is it draws 2 images, one using the X value of this timer, which is initially set at 0, and then the next one, the X value for it, is the width of the first image plus this variable that starts at 0 from the timer. Every 30 milliseconds, that timer is incremented by 1. So the 2 images scroll across the screen, and then when that variable reaches the width of the first image, it changes back to 0. So the 2 images reset, and then they just keep doing that until the end of a stage. So a stage transition happens when the stages end or when you get a game over. A stage transition, what it does is it makes the stage object in Game Panel into the next stage or the current stage, depending on what kind of transition you're getting, and then it changes, or it stops the thread and then starts the thread of the stage that you are going into, depending on what transition you get. So there are two kinds of transitions. There's a next stage transition and there's a game over transition. A next stage transition is a transition that puts you into the next stage. A game over transition is a transition that puts you back into the same stage that you died in. So power-up enemies and a couple other enemies in the game use these vector movements, and the way that that's done is you calculate the difference in the y and the difference in x between the 2 points, and then you take those values, add them together, square them, get the square root, and that gives you the magnitude. You then divide both of those values, the dy and dx, by that magnitude to normalize them, and then you use those normalized values as the movements for the enemy every frame or every update of the game panel. So the dy and dx are larger when the distance is larger. So it moves quicker and then slows down as it gets closer to the player. A power-up enemy is an enemy that contains a power-up, so when you kill them, power-ups come out of them, and they move using the vector movement that I just talked about, and they also are color shifted so that they're different than the rest of the enemies. The color shift changes all blue values to red values and all red values to blue values for every pixel, and it does that for each stage, and here's a demonstration of that. Now let me give a quick demo. So there you see the spawner starts and the enemies start coming out. So let me go ahead and start killing these enemies. You can see this is a power-up enemy. You can see his color is different and he follows me using that vector movement. Now I'm going to go ahead and die to show a transition. I won't be able to show both types of transitions under the time frame. So there's the transition, game over, you failed, try again. And then it restarts the stage from the very beginning, so you get that line of enemies again. You keep your weapons power up so that you don't lose it through the transitions. Thank you.